Sometimes love doesn't arrive with fanfare or grand gestures. Sometimes it comes in whispers in the darkest hours, spoken to someone who was never meant to hear. This is the story of Emma and James, of 80 days that rewrote two destinies, and of a love so pure it defied every odd. Stay until the very end, because what unfolds between a woman trapped in her own body and a janitor who thought he was talking to the void will destroy you and rebuild you all at once. Emma Harrison was 28 when her life ended and began on the same night. A drunk driver obliterated her car on a rain-soaked highway, and when the paramedics pulled her from the wreckage, she was barely alive. Traumatic brain injury, shattered ribs, punctured lung. They rushed her to St. Catherine's Hospital, where surgeons worked for 9 hours to save her. She survived the operating table, but what came after was worse than death. Emma fell into a minimally conscious state, trapped in the prison of her own body, machines breathing for her, her eyes open but seeing nothing, or so everyone believed. But here's the devastating truth nobody knew. Emma was fully conscious, every single moment. She could hear the doctors telling her parents she'd likely never wake up. She could hear her mother sobbing at her bedside, begging God to take her instead. She could hear her younger sister, Lily, whispering, "Please don't leave me. I can't do life without you." And Emma screamed inside her frozen body, tears she couldn't cry burning in her chest. "I'm here. I'm right here." But nothing moved. Not a finger. Not an eyelid. She was buried alive inside herself, and the terror of it was suffocating. Days crawled into weeks. Her family visited religiously, her mother holding her hand for hours, her father reading her favorite books aloud, his voice breaking on every page. Lily brought flowers and talked about everything and nothing, desperate to fill the silence. But as time passed, Emma heard something shift in their voices. The hope dimming, the conversations turning to quality of life and what she would have wanted. Her mother's prayers changed from, "Please heal her," to "Please let her go peacefully." And Emma wanted to scream that she wasn't ready to go, that she was fighting with everything she had. But she was invisible in her own life. The nights were the worst. After visiting hours, the ICU fell into a heavy silence, broken only by beeping monitors and ventilator hisses. Emma was left alone with her thoughts, her terror, her desperate prayers that someone, anyone, would know she was still there. That's when James started coming. James Miller was 42, a night shift janitor who'd worked at St. Catherine's for 14 years. Life hadn't been kind to him. His wife Marie had died 3 years earlier after a brutal fight with cancer. He'd held her hand as she took her last breath, and something in him had shattered that day. His daughter Rebecca was away at college, and James was alone in a house full of memories that cut like glass. So he worked night after night, mopping floors and cleaning rooms, invisible to everyone, which suited him fine. Being invisible meant not having to explain the grief carved into his bones. Room 412 became part of his nightly routine. The young woman there never had visitors after 8 p.m., and something about her loneliness resonated with his own. The first night he spoke to her was purely accidental. The silence felt too oppressive, so he said, "Evening, miss. I'm James. I'll try not to disturb you." He didn't expect a response. She was in a coma, after all. But the words felt better than silence. Inside her motionless body, Emma heard him. A voice that wasn't weeping, wasn't discussing her like she was already gone. Just a gentle voice acknowledging her as a person. Something in her chest, something she thought had died, flickered weakly back to life. James came back the next night and the next. At first, he just narrated his cleaning. "Floors are looking pretty rough tonight. Someone spilled coffee by the nurse's station. Amateur hour." But as nights passed and the silent woman never flinched, never showed any sign of hearing, James started talking about real things. He told her about his day, about the difficult patient in 307, about the terrible coffee in the break room. He told her about Rebecca, how she wanted to be a veterinarian, how proud and terrified he was watching her grow up without her mother. Emma drank in every word like someone dying of thirst. She learned that James loved the Beatles, that he'd wanted to be a teacher, but life had other plans, that he visited Marie's grave every Sunday with sunflowers. She learned that he blamed himself for not catching his wife's cancer sooner. That guilt was a weight he carried in silence. These confessions, shared with someone he thought couldn't hear, became Emma's entire world. In the endless darkness of her paralysis, James's voice was the only light. 6 weeks in, James pulled up a chair after his shift ended and just sat. "I don't know why I keep talking to you," he said quietly. "Maybe because you're the only one who doesn't tell me I should move on, that Marie would want me to be happy." "How do they know what she'd want?" His voice cracked. "I talk to you because it doesn't hurt as much. You don't pity me. You just listen, or I pretend you do. Maybe I'm losing my mind. He laughed bitterly. Marie always said I talked too much. Guess some things don't change. Emma's heart shattered. She wanted to tell him she was listening, that his words were the only thing keeping her sane, that he wasn't alone. She focused every ounce of her being on moving something, anything. Her finger, her toe, just one small sign, but her body remained a traitor, locked and useless. The frustration was a scream she couldn't release. As weeks became months, something impossible happened. Emma fell in love, not with a face or a touch, but with a soul. With the man who described sunsets to someone in darkness. With the man who apologized when he bumped into her bed. With the man who cried one night talking about his daughter's first day of kindergarten and how Marie had been there with a camera. And he'd been at work. And he'd missed it. And now all the moments were gone, and he'd never get them back. This broken, beautiful man who showed up every single night and talked to silence, he became everything. On night 78, James came in and didn't clean. He just sat down heavily, head in his hands. I heard your family talking to the doctors today. They're going to withdraw support next week. Let you go. His voice broke completely. I know I'm nobody to you. Just the janitor. But I need to say this. You, whoever you are in there or were, you've saved me these past months. Talking to you pulled me out of a darkness I was drowning in. You made me feel less alone. Tears dripped onto the floor. I hope wherever you are, you're at peace. And I hope you know that you mattered. To your family, to this world, and to me. Something detonated inside Emma. Rage, love, desperation. It all fused into one single, burning thought. No, she would not let them give up. She would not let James think she hadn't heard every precious word. Every cell in her body screamed for movement. Her consciousness dove into the darkness of her paralysis, like a swimmer, fighting to the surface. Move, move, please God, move! Her right hand twitched, just barely, but it moved. James's head snapped up. Emma? Her hand moved again, fingers curling slightly. James lunged for the call button, shouting for nurses, his hands trembling as he grabbed hers. You're there. Oh God, you're in there. Stay with me. Stay with me. The room flooded with people. Doctors, nurses, machines. Her family was called, arriving in a chaos of tears and disbelief. And through it all, James stood in the corner, hands over his mouth, tears streaming, watching the miracle he'd prayed for without knowing he was praying. Emma's recovery was brutal. Months of therapy to relearn everything, swallowing, speaking, moving. But the moment she could form words, raspy and broken, she asked for him. James, where's James? They brought him to her room. He stood in the doorway, uncertain, suddenly shy. Emma looked at this ordinary man with tired eyes and silver in his hair, and her heart recognized him completely. I heard you, she whispered. Every single word. Every story. Every tear, all of it. James's face crumbled. He crossed the room, fell to his knees beside her bed. I'm so sorry. I didn't know. I shouldn't have burdened you. You saved me. Emma's eyes filled with tears that could finally fall. Your voice was the only thing that kept me human. In that darkness, you were my light. I fell in love with you, James. With your broken heart and your terrible jokes in the way. You described sunflowers like they were the most important thing in the world. I fell in love with the man who talked to silence, because kindness mattered more than being heard. James took her hand, brought it to his lips. I talked to you because you made me feel less invisible. Even silent, you heard me better than anyone ever has. The road was long, 8 more months of rehabilitation. Some days Emma cried from frustration. Some days James sat beside her, holding her hand, telling her about his day. Slowly, painfully, she came back to life. 14 months after the accident, Emma walked out of the hospital on her own legs, James beside her. Her family wept with joy. The doctors called it a miracle. Emma called it love. 2 years later, on a sunny Sunday morning, James took Emma to Marie's grave. They placed sunflowers there together. Emma had never met Marie, but she loved her for loving James, for shaping him into the man who'd saved her. James spoke to the headstone. Marie, this is Emma. She's the one I told you about. I think you sent her to me. Thank you for that. Thank you for everything. They married that fall in the hospital chapel where it all began. Emma's vows broke everyone. You spoke to me when the world had gone silent. You gave me a reason to fight. You loved me before you knew my face, before I could love you back. And I will spend every day I have left showing you that miracles are real, that love finds us even in the darkest places, and that you, James Miller, are the greatest gift I never knew to ask for. James's vows were simpler. I talked to you because I was lonely. You listened because you couldn't leave, but somehow in that darkness we found each other. You're my second chance, Emma, my proof that love doesn't end, it transforms. I will never stop talking to you, never stop listening, never stop choosing you. 5 years later they had a daughter. They named her Hope. Because that's what whispers in the dark give us when we're brave enough to listen. Sometimes love doesn't announce itself. Sometimes it arrives in the smallest moments, in the gentlest words, spoken by someone who thinks no one is listening. And sometimes that's exactly when miracles happen.